The American politics and the 2016 election. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. Politics are one of the basic things that all people can have an opinion and impact on. Politics can be both a pain and a blessing, and it leads to many arguments, but also can lead to good educated conversation and resolutions to problems. Once Gandhi said, anyone who says they are not interested in politics is like a drowning man who insists he's not interested in water. In the American political system, there are two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. There are many smaller parties as well. Both of the major parties have differing views on the major issues in our country. Two classifications of someone's views are conservative and liberal. According to Merriam-Webster, a conservative person is a person who is averse to change and holds to traditional values and attitudes. A liberal is defined as someone who follows a political and social philosophy advocating individual freedom, representational forms of government, progress and reform, and protection of civil liberties. Republicans are generally more conservative and Democrats more liberal. One of the big issues in our country right now is the issue of abortion. Republicans, generally speaking, are more conservative and oppose abortion, while most Democrats support abortion and stem cell research, which is like looking into altering stem cells of babies. On the topic of gay marriage, hard conservatives do not support the Supreme Court decision. They do not support it because it is against the traditional belief that they have one man and one woman is a marriage and nothing else. Also because they think that they don't think that the federal government has the power to override the state government because of the 10th Amendment, which states the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states or reserved to the states respectively or to the people. This issue is very similar to many present throughout the course of American history due to many issues receiving a mandate from the federal government that tells states how they should side on any given issue, which in many people's minds goes against the Constitution. These grudge matches that led to a federal government v. state government power struggle are what caused cracks in the government, both federal and state, that led to the Civil War. While most actually believe that the Civil War was fought because of slavery, there are some who believe that it was fought because the Confederate States of America unified and decided to fight for the power of states' rights and not let the government infringe on the powers of the Constitution. Jefferson Davis, the president of the CSA, once said, "The principle for which we contend is bound to reassert itself, though it may be at another time and in another form." And in that quote, we see that we are experiencing that exact scenario today and throughout the course of American history. For example, the legalization of marijuana, but in this case, it is the Democrats using states' rights rather than the Republicans. This shows that it isn't really one party is right or wrong. It is that they both try to pick and choose what to support and why do they not, and why that they do not hold constant in everything. Republicans also do not support gay marriage because the Constitution gives the Supreme Court the power to interpret laws, not to make new ones, which is basically a partial use of states' rights. Democrats embrace the decision as it goes with their support of equal treatment for everyone, which is a large basis of what most Democrats say they support. Like they support more government reforms to make men and women get paid the same amount and to allow women to be in jobs that require certain physical standards that are more likely geared to men, even going as far as pushing for standards to be dropped so that women can pass the same standards. Also trying to impose guidelines that say companies must have women in certain positions, like on the board of directors. On immigration, most Republicans support deporting illegal immigrants because they broke the law the second they step over the border. Therefore, everything that they did after is an act of criminal level, and also they don't pay income tax or property tax, and they don't do many things legally because they are not citizens. But Democrats support amnesty, or a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants, even though they are technically criminals under the law, but they overlook it and say that because of the difficulty of the path to citizenship and that they are just trying to gain a better life. Another issue that is a hot topic is the issue of gun control and the violence that comes from the ownership of guns. Democrats generally support more rigorous gun control laws, even propose banning some guns completely, while Republicans argue that all of these are a violation of their Second Amendment rights, which state a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Also, if you impose more regulations, that the only people it hurts is law-abiding citizens, because criminals that desire to use guns for malicious acts are going to get a gun, no matter what, and that it being legal or not is not going to stop a criminal. But with lots of continuing gun violence, it is an issue that keeps in the hot topics in our political sphere. There are smaller parties as well. The Tea Party is a party similar to the Republican Party, and some members are Republicans but have members from all parties. They believe in upholding the Constitution and are very conservative. Some of the big positions for the Tea Party are that gun ownership is sacred and shall be protected. They support reduction of all taxes. They support making English our core language and a smaller government. The Constitution Party is another big minor political party, also a conservative group that follows the Constitution almost directly. They are opposed to Obamacare, amnesty, gun control, and Common Core. They are all for states' rights and believe that each state should increase National Guard to protect against an invasion. The Constitution was a document in our history passed in 1783 that outlines the powers of the government and has the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, outlining the basic human rights that every citizen possesses. Article 2 is where we can find the powers given to the president. In Article 2, Section 2, it says that the president is the commander-in-chief of the Army, Navy, and the militia of several states. Now, of course, that includes the Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard. The president can appoint justices to the Supreme Court, make treaties, both pending approval from Congress. The president can appoint a congressman in the case of a recess and must give a State of the Union address to Congress. The president is also responsible for receiving any ambassadors to the United States. His most important role is to ensure that all laws are faithfully executed. Many people can run for president, as there are really only 3 true requirements. You have to be born in the United States or in U.S. territory, like a military base in another country. You must be at least 35 years old. You must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years before you run. The president also has a group of appointed advisors called a cabinet. One of the bigger cabinet positions is the Secretary of State, as a good number of presidents first served as Secretary of State. This is the president's foreign policy advisor, who can advise on appointments, conduct negotiations, issue passports, and negotiate and terminate treaties. Another big cabinet member is the Secretary of the Treasury, which is the person in charge of the money in the United States. They are responsible for ensuring the economic prosperity of the U.S. Also, they are in charge of printing new money, paying the public, and presenting Congress with a report on the financial situation. If you've been paying attention to the elections this year, they talk about how many delegates each candidate has. A delegate is someone who is elected and is usually a local politician that votes for the candidate they chose to support. A delegate can be anyone. They just have to run as a delegate and support their candidate if they win that state or congressional district at the party convention. There are 2 types of election processes: caucuses and primaries. A primary is a more traditional environment where people go to a poll and vote for a delegate who supports their candidate. However, a caucus is where two groups of people will stand on opposite sides of the room and yell and say why they chose their candidate and why that candidate is the best. A caucus is decided by the side with the most support. The number of delegates needed to clinch a nomination is different for each party because there are less up for grabs in the Republican Party. For Republicans, the candidate needs 1,237 delegates. And for Democrats, they need 2,383 delegates. At the convention for the party, the delegates will vote for the person they support, and the candidate that hits the number mentioned above gets nominated by their party. However, in November, during the general election, where nominees of the Republican and Democratic sides run against each other and against nominees of smaller parties and independent candidates, the system is very different. In the general election, it's based on the Electoral College. This is basically a different group of delegates who decide who becomes president. In the election, the winner of each state will be awarded a certain number of electoral votes equal to that state's representation in Congress. So in Alabama, we get 9 electoral votes because we have 2 senators and 7 representatives in the House of Representatives. The candidates with the most number of electoral votes wins the election and becomes the next president of the United States. In the case where the results are unclear due to a miscount, as in 2000 with Bush against Gore, Congress votes on who becomes the next president as outlined in the Constitution. The 2016 election has been pretty crazy so far. On the Republican side, there were 17 major candidates, including 5 former and current senators, 9 former and current governors, Ben Carson, a neurosurgeon, Carly Fiorina, a businesswoman, and Donald Trump, businessman. It has been a very crazy election cycle that has been very controversial and noteworthy due to the candidates and what they have said about one another and others involved in the media and the coverage of the race. Also due to many of their plans and policies for their hopeful presidencies. For example, Donald Trump had his tirades against opposing candidates, the press, women, illegal immigrants, and Muslims. Many people have called him a racist and some even call him a fascist. But his supporters tend to support him completely without care of all the haters. He has also stated many times that he does not support amnesty and that he wants to deport all illegals to build a wall on the Mexican border, which many consider unlikely. But when he first announced his candidacy, most thought it was a joke and he had no chance. But now, Donald Trump is the likely nominee for the Republican Party, so anything is possible. He has also gotten a lot of heat for some of his comments about Muslims and women. Even though he is the presumptive nominee, many say he stands no chance because of his unfavorability with women and most minorities, but he is still polling high with many young voters, men and whites, are who make up his typical supporters. But since he is now that presumptive nominee, it is likely the Republican Party will unify around him. While most of the hate and love has been for Trump, Rafael Ted Cruz was also one of the notable candidates because he was considered by many a very conservative candidate. But also, he is a naturalized citizen born in a military base in Canada, which some people believe for some reason that he cannot run because he was born in Canada, even though it says in the Constitution he is legal to run because he was born on a military base. This election cycle has been one that most people will remember for a long time due to the craziness and the notable moments that will affect our future that have begun to emerge now, and the candidate needs to be the right one because it is important for the future of our nation. The former Florida Governor Jeb Bush was the favorite for the nomination at the start, but was losing on the debate stage badly to the likes of Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz. Some candidates like Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker and Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal dropped out before the primaries even began. Cruz and Trump won the first 2 states, and many candidates dropped out. As the race went on, candidates began dropping like flies. Donald Trump dominated on Super Tuesday, the day where most states in the South hold their primaries. Donald Trump led from the beginning on in terms of delegates, with Cruz and Rubio the 2 behind him. The final 3 candidates were Ted Cruz, a Texas senator, John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, and Donald Trump. Kasich and Cruz tried to form an alliance where Kasich would pull support out of certain states, letting Cruz win, and Cruz doing the same in an attempt to prevent Trump from being the nominee. Both Cruz and Kasich dropped out following Trump's blowout win in Indiana, leaving Trump the presumptive nominee. On the Democratic side, there were really only 3 major candidates in the beginning: Secretary of State and former Secretary of State and former Senator of New York Hillary Clinton, Senator of Vermont Bernie Sanders, and former Governor of Maryland Martin O'Malley. With a large amount of people rushed to get current Vice President Joe Biden to run, he decided against it. Also, many people tried to get Elizabeth Warren, a senator from Massachusetts, to run. She also denied. While it hasn't been as crazy as the Republican side, there has been enough controversy and noteworthy events on the Democratic side, mainly surrounding Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, who are coincidentally the final 2 candidates to still remain in the race on the Democratic side. The controversy has been about Hillary Clinton and if she should be able to become president because of her involvement in the 2012 Benghazi attacks that resulted in the deaths of 4 American citizens, including 2 CIA contractors and former Navy SEALs, and 2 diplomats, including U.S. Ambassador to Libya Chris Stevens, also involving her use of a private unsecured server to send both personal and professional emails that included fully redacted and classified emails that were breaches in national security, which in many other cases, like General Petraeus, has led to other government officials to both be court-martialed and face criminal charges. Both of these events had led to most libertarians and Republicans being strongly against her for being the next president. Another large storyline taking place on the Democratic side is the success of Bernie Sanders due to the fact that he is a Democratic socialist and a non-establishment candidate. He has also inspired a huge wave of young supporters to support him, mainly because he promised them free college, but this is important because these voters are the future of the American political system. He also has been highly criticized because he hasn't had a single paying job prior to him being a senator of Vermont, and because a large amount of his policies are very unorthodox and very liberal, unlike most moderate Democrats, libertarians, and centrists. To this point, Hillary is on the edge of victory, holding 2,240 of the needed 2,383 delegates, but Sanders is still surging. The Clinton-Trump likely matchup has many threatening not to vote or vote third party in the November election, as they are happy with neither.